This is the gas chamber. Hello and welcome to another history special. And you join me at the memorial here in Dachau, the location of which is the former concentration camp here in the town. The concentration camp opened on the 22nd of March 1933. But it's the site where, during the Second World War, between 1940 and 1945, more than 28,000 people died. Countless Jews died from malnutrition, disease, overwork, or were executed. I'm sitting here on the platform at the former concentration camp. This is where the trains pulled up and the prisoners got out and were marched into the camp. Today is only a small segment of track and platform that remains, a reminder to the events that happened here all those years ago. Now let's go inside the camp and take a look at what remains and try and understand a little bit more about what happened here back in the Second World War. As I walk through the gates, you can see the words written in the railings. Arbeit macht frei. Work makes you free. It's the motto in all the labour camps, extermination camps, because the people who came here under the impression that they were going to work and not to be executed or worked under harsh conditions which resulted in their deaths. But it's very peaceful here, very tranquil. I guess it's the calm after the storm being the activities during the Second World War. This area here would have been the accommodation for the prisoners, even though the buildings have long since been demolished. You can still see the outline where they were. Just rows and rows, must be 30 odd rows of barracks here. Gosh, this is very... I'm almost lost for words walking around here, thinking that so many people died here. 28,000 died here, and that's it's a huge number of people. But in relation to the deaths at other camps that were controlled by the Nazis, it's actually a very small number. 50,000 at Bergen-Belsen, 78,000 at Majdanek, and 1.1 million in Auschwitz, the most notorious of all of them. Other camps included Sobibor, Ravensburg and Treblinka, and there were many others. In total, 2.7 million people were murdered by the Nazis in death camps. A staggering amount of people. A number almost beyond comprehension in scale. Unbelievable, it really is. On the left hand side you can see the one of the watchtowers and the perimeter fence of this particular compound. The tranquility of the place is overshadowed at the moment by the sound of the workmen, which is rather a shame. But just up here is the site of the former crematorium. So let's go and have a look at that. Ever since I booked my trip to come to Germany, I've known that I was going to come here to visit this camp, and to be honest, I didn't know how I would feel walking in an area that has so much history. Let's be polite here. And as I walked down through the gates here towards the crematorium, I remember all those who walked here between 1940 and 1945. All those people who made their final journey under the impression they were going to get showers before going off to their accommodation blocks. But in reality, this was the end of the line for them. I feel a little uneasy actually walking down here. Perhaps I shouldn't. Yes, I should. There's a statue on the left-hand side here. Den Toten zur Herr den Liebenden zur Manhung. Okay, translates as honour the dead to remind the living. Absolutely. It's interesting that they've preserved all the buildings exactly as they are. They could so easily have torn them down and try and erase any visible signs of the past. But these buildings should be here as a reminder to what happened here during the Second World War. So let's walk in the footsteps of the prisoners and follow the route through the crematorium. As you walk in, this is where the victims were to be informed on using the supposed showers. This was the waiting area. Gosh. Quite surreal being here. And then they would walk through here to the next room. And this is the disrobing room. This is where the victims were to leave their clothes before entering the gas chamber. The gas chamber being disguised as showers. The clothing was brought to the disinfecting chamber before the next group could enter this room. So all the prisoners in here would now be naked, ready to go into a mass shower. Probably a couple of hundred people. And then they would walk through into the shower room. This is the gas chamber. I feel rather unnerving about being in here, knowing what happened in here, knowing how many countless people died in this room. You can see the vents on the ceiling where the gas would have come in, disguised as shower heads. Some of the prisoners would have taken just a few minutes to die, others up to 15 minutes. This is very surreal here. And on the floor you can see the grates where the supposed water would have drained away. This room looks like a shower room, but it's a room of death. Once the gas had done its work, the bodies would then have been piled up in this room here. Those surviving prisoners who were on work detail would have taken the prisoners and just piled their bodies here, ready for them to go into the crematorium. Some of the bodies here may be here for several hours, whilst they wait their turn in the cremator. And the cremator is just through here. In this room here, you can see 4 cremators. There may have been others, but there's 4 in this room. And I can imagine the sound and the sight of all the workers in here taking the bodies to be burnt, probably several at a time. The sound, the smell, and the heat in this room must have added to the ambience of this dreadful place. Really is very strange. This was also an execution room because prisoners were hung here directly in front of the burning ovens. Those people must have been absolutely terrified, not just for what was about to happen to them, but from the ambience in here, which would have made their ordeal even worse to endure. Getting a little emotional here. And just through here is another room, and this was also used to store the bodies of the deceased that were brought here from the prison camp to be cremated. When the US Army liberated Dachau in 1945, in April 1945, there were still bodies here waiting to be cremated. An appalling sight which must have befallen the American soldiers. Nothing could have prepared you for that sort of sight. How could a group of people have so much hatred towards others? But unfortunately, the human race doesn't learn from history. And there are still atrocities in the world today committed in the name of religion, hate, or whichever term is being used at the time. Holocausts have happened in other countries, and we condemn it today, just as we condemn the Holocaust of the 1940s during the Second World War. Let's take a look around the rest of the camp here and see what we can discover. And I'm sure we're not going to discover anything more grim than the crematorium. Behind the trees behind me, you can see the top of the Russian Orthodox Church, and on my left is the Protestant Chapel of Reconciliation. I suppose the only comfort we can take from the atrocities that happened here is the perpetrators were all rounded up at the end of the Second World War and brought to justice. Majority were hung, and majority were hung at Landsberg prison, where I was the other day, and their bodies buried in Spottingen Cemetery. Does it seem right that those people should have individual graves when the people that they murdered were buried in mass graves, some several thousand at a time? I'll leave you to answer that question. Just a little further on is the Catholic Chapel, which was unveiled in 1960. Its architect, Joseph Weidemann, and it's quite a beautiful structure. It really is, it's lovely. Now let's head on down here back to the main part of the camp and to the main gate where I came in. The commandant of Dachau camp here was a man called Martin Gottfried Weiss, and he was the commandant here from 1942 until 1945. He was captured at the end of the war, put on trial, found guilty of war crimes, and executed at Landsberg prison on the 29th of May 1946. And he was hung by the American hangman John Chris Woods. But it's interesting walking down this tree-lined path, looking at the barracks on the left and the right, even numbers on the right and odd numbers on the left. 30 or so in each row. Bottom of the tree-lined path is the main square where I came in, and the main entrance gate. Just on the left here they've got a barrack room which has been preserved. So let's go inside and take a look at the living quarters that the prisoners had whilst they were here. Just as you walk into here, the barrack room, there's a reconstruction of a toilet facility which looks very communal. Certainly no privacy there. And there's also a reconstruction of the barracks as well. Dachau held about 30,000 prisoners, but at some points the camp was overflowing with people, and they crammed in around 2,000 people into a barrack block, which can't have been very nice at all. And here is the washing facilities area. Again, very limited for the number of people that are housed in the block. And this here is a communal room. This is where the prisoners could congregate. Community space, and again it must have been overflowing with people at certain times. Just through here is another dormitory area, 12 rows of bunk beds, and each 3 high, accommodate 144 people, but due to overcrowding of the camp and 2 to 3 to a bed, maybe more, the area must have been very grim indeed. And the ambience and the fragrance in the air from the unclean people must have been rather nasty indeed. But you can only watch the newsreels to get a feel of just what the prisoners went through whilst incarcerated here in Dachau. Let's go across back into the courtyard and head to the front and take a look at the memorial that's out the front of the building. It's been absolutely fascinating walking around here, looking at what remains and trying to understand and comprehend the scale of the activities that occurred here during the Second World War and the atrocities that were committed here. It really is a place that everyone should visit at least once in their lifetime. Maybe the world would be a better place if people had more understanding of the crimes that were committed here. This was the first of the large-scale concentration camps opened by the Nazis, and this became a memorial site back in 1965. It's interesting that looking at the memorial, the sculpture behind, it was actually by a man called Nandor Glid. It was erected in 1968. Nandor was a Yugoslavian and a former Holocaust survivor. So it's only poignant that his sculpture should be on the front here of this building, overlooking the camp. The actual memorial itself depicts decaying bodies, just as they would have been piled up, ready to go into the crematorium. Wow. As I come to the end of this video, I'm still a little lost for words, trying to comprehend the scale and the magnitude of what happened here. But I'll leave you with your own thoughts on this video and the events that happened here. Thank you for watching.